Calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock by my internet time. Roll call vote, roll call, just we're not voting yet, just the roll call.
Commissioner Gardner,
Here.
Commissioner Weiner,
Here.
Commissioner Bachmann,
Here.
Commissioner Adams,
Here.
Commissioner Lant.
Just a note for everyone else, Commissioner Lon is out of town, but he's planning to join via Zoom, so we'll let everybody know when he joins. Approval of minutes, unless we have additions, deletions, or corrections. I'm looking both ways here. I'll ask for unanimous consent. Hearing no objections, they've been approved. I'll read what we're approving, but the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. They are Park Commission Study Session, September 3rd, 2025, and Park Commission Regular Business Meeting, September 10th, 2025. I have no additions or deletions. No one else does. I don't think we have public forum tonight. I mean, we have it, but I don't have anybody requesting to speak, which brings us to the consent agenda. Would someone like to move on the consent agenda?
Sure. I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
And a second?
A second.
Thank you. Would you like to? Okay. Do we get to see him? No. That way I can tell when he wants to speak. Voila, there he is. Can you see us, Commissioner Lunt?
I can.
Excellent.
And just so you know, we'll have to switch back and forth.
I understand. Where was I? We are at the consent agenda. Commissioner Weiner, you want to speak to that?
I think I have no comments.
Okay. Commissioner Adams?
I support the consent agenda, which today is the adoption of the Trails Advisory Committee bylaws.
Thank you for noting that. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner,
Yes.
Commissioner Bachmann,
Yes.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Lant.
Yes.
Thank you. That takes us to number 7 on our agenda, and that would be the director's report.
Good evening. For the record, Rocky Houston, Director, Ashland Parks and Recreation Department. So before we jump into some of the items tonight on the update, I just want to update that we had 2 public meetings since we last met. The first one was on September 17th. It was our second public meeting for the strategic plan or PROS plan. We had about 25 people in attendance. We provided an overview of the work we've done today, the information we've gathered, and then we discussed our 2 types of goals we're setting and looked at draft service level goals and got some feedback through that. Overall, it was pretty positive. There was a lot of pickleball supporters in that meeting, and so we had a lot of discussion around pickleball needs and those levels. And so it was a good conversation all in all. The next week, on the next Wednesday, we had the Hunter Park Tennis Restoration Project. So we had our plans that we presented, and as well as our scope of work. We had more than 55 or so people that signed up. 58 people that showed up there. A lot of tennis users, of course, and a commissioner there as well, if I recall correctly, or 2. And it was a nice discussion. There was a lot of support for the project. The key questions were around not impacting the high school season, as well as wanting to know if pickleball lines or other court uses were going to be integrated, and we indicated at this time. This project is solely focused on the tennis lines going down. However, in the future, we don't know what's going to occur, but that's where we're at this time. We'll do a little different update this month, and maybe you've gotten the newsletter, maybe you've gotten the other things, but we're going digital. So we've had a online or digital recreation guide for quite a while, but we've been sending it out as well in paper or print format as well. And so I wanted to not only share with all of you, but those watching, kind of some ways that you can engage with our going digital. So this is our website. You're going to notice there, right in the middle bottom of the screen is a picture of the guide. You can click that and that will open up the guide. It has a nice little sound as you turn pages, and then graphics is going through there, so it almost feels real. You can also, on the upper right corner, you can see that little icon there. I don't know if you call that clay, where you could explore our play guide. So again, that's always there. Where the play guide is as a picture, that's a rotating thing, so there'll be other things that are there as we rotate that, but we do keep that button in the upper right there all the time. When you do click it open, you're going to see, here's the inside 2 pages of it. Going to be able to see it. You can zoom in or zoom out, again, based off the size of your screen. It works fairly well in a tablet, phone, or old school computer screen as well. With that is, you can also, if you don't want to keep going to our website, you can click right above the little image of it where it says downloadable version, so you can actually download it onto your computer or onto your electronic device, where you could have that with you as well. So that's another way that you can carry around with you. And if you have poor service, so you're walking through Lithia Park and you wanted to explore that, you would have that as a PDF that you could download and have that as well. Now, the whole reason why we have the guide is to let you know what we've got going on and how to register and start registering for the next couple of months of classes. And so again, up on that upper right hand side, we have an icon that says register for an activity. And you can set up an account and then order through there, save all your information, have your whole family in there. So it's, I think we went live with this activity a little over a year and a half ago, as I'm looking behind the screens to Deputy Director Dials. We continue to have good success with people utilizing that. Of course, you can always come into our office there at the Grove during our operating hours, and we can sign you up that way as a backup. And I think the phone as well is another way that we can do it as well. What we are doing to help promote the things that we're doing beyond just the guide is another digital thing we're working on is this third icon down below is our newsletter. So we're sending out a newsletter that comes in. If you sign up, put your email in there, it'll automatically come, and it'll be an update. And I think all of you received one this last month. We'll continue to work on that and make that to where you can click our clicks on that, and then clicks in there to get to other items has been at a pretty good rate. So it seems to be successful. And the last thing is as you're going around through our parks and our properties and you see something that just doesn't look right, like a tree took out a bridge, there used to be a playground there, now it's missing because a tornado came through, or there's too many deer in Lithia Park with big horns right now. We have the C-Click Fix, and so you can just click that icon, it'll bring it in to where you can type in an issue. This actually works not only for parks, but for any city issue, and it'll get routed to the right department, and then it gets logged, and then we can track those issues. And saves you from calling us or one of our employees, and then maybe it gets put on a piece of paper and gets lost. Again, this allows us to track and make sure and there's a timeline to complete the task or to follow up and indicate that that tree's going to stay where it is because it's actually not in the trail. It's not on the bridge. It's a habitat tree now, and so we're going to let it lie there. So that is my update this month. Any questions on other park things?
Commissioner Gardner.
I was just wondering, is it common, do other communities do all their registration for classes online or all their offerings online? Did we scope that out before we decided to go all digital?
And I'll turn this over to Deputy Director Dials. The short answer is yes, but
Yeah.
So it's definitely a mix. There's not all communities go digital with their program guide, but for us, since the city was going digital with their newsletter, we made the decision, and related to the budget as well, to cut back on the amount of printed copies that we're doing. We are reevaluating that. The program that we use to send out our newsletter tracks the number of people that are actually clicking into the newsletter and clicking into the program guide, so we're getting a really good hits on both of those things. So we'll continue to track it and monitor it. City of Medford is one of our closest neighbors, and they are still planning on sending out their program guide, printing it and sending it to their customers, and they don't have any plans to not do that at this point. So
Right.
we'll continue to monitor it, though.
Right.
And-
'Cause the concern would be is that usage would go down because people either aren't aware of it or can't figure it out.
so in the spring winter guide, we're going to send out a postcard. Postage is a big cost for sending it out, so we're going to send that out, as well as we're exploring with our marketing team some other print ad opportunities so that we can put out more breadcrumbs out there in different formats that maybe have a higher distribution level as well. So I think we're looking at those other avenues to
We are.
continue to enhance our marketing in different ways to bring people to our phone number, our office, or to our website.
And it's definitely not lost on us that there are people that like to see like to have it in their hands and hold it and, yep, absolutely.
It stimulates them to want to participate.
Absolutely.
And
So,
then-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Is the cost mostly the postage, or is it printing it?
It's printing and postage.
So printing a smaller amount and having them at the Grove and at the
You
senior
have to
center?
do it a certain amount through the printing company for it to be worth your while. And we could look at doing less and just having them, but we don't really know what to expect as far as how many people would pick it up. Or we could just say, we have 100 available, come pick them up until they're gone. I mean, that could be an option. But I think we're just kind of seeing how this goes with other opportunities.
Seems like just a step in the right direction to me, and my wife liked it. She read it to me. The postcard will have what information on it?
It'll just, the postcard itself will have just reminding people that we went digital and to check, here's our website, here's where you can go to look at the program guide, reminding people to register for winter, spring classes. So the postcard will go out after the winter, spring program guide is ready. So probably between Christmas and New Year's. And then after that, we'll send out like a digital newsletter as well as a reminder. So we're kind of doing all these little reminders for folks to remember to register.
It'll take a while to get everybody. QR code on the postcard
Yep.
that would take people right to
Yep.
the link? Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you for that update. That takes us to business, and the first item on business, Roman numeral 8, number 1, is Acid Castle adjacent parcels.
And I apologize, I should have had an extra space in there between the 7 and the 1. So, thank you. The situation is that the department has acquired 3 properties adjacent to Acid Castle for natural area and trail purposes. And the proposal that we have here for informational item is to consolidate those 3 parcels into one Acid Castle natural area. So for those at home or don't know exactly where that park is, here is a map of the city and our park properties. And there on that northwest corner that's just west of Lithia Park, in that red circle, is where Acid Castle, it is number 20 on this map. And if I zoom in, The 4 parcels there is Acid Castle, Lawrence property, Granite Street property, and the Burnson property. I believe 2 of those names are related to the previous owner's name as a reference. And so the orange line here would be the proposed boundary to consolidate those properties into just one natural area. Most of the users coming through here are for trails, and that's primarily their wayfinding through, and so having that change, I don't think would disrupt the recreational use, and may make it a little simpler in regards to, which parcel or property am I on. Usually they're going to say I'm on the ditch trail, or I'm on this trail or that trail if they do get into trouble. So for direction, we're seeking is if Park Commission has support in directing staff to bring this proposal back as an action item later, and or are there additional questions or input on this proposal as is?
Okay, so basically, just let me repeat it back to make sure I understand, is you're asking us to consider consolidating what we've been referring to as prior owners, as identifying the individual pieces typical of what we have done over time, into a single park called Acid Castle. Park or open space?
Correct.
Which one would it be?
Under our classification, it'd be natural area,
Natural area, which is,
previously known as open space.
okay, thank you. I will eventually pick that up. So I just want to be sure that's what we're talking about. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Gardner?
So is there ongoing maintenance on all these properties?
Yes, we do. Primarily is fuels reduction and through these plus the trail management.
So would consolidating them have any effect on, I mean, I can't see that it would, but I just wondering.
No, let me look at the map very quickly. Technically, although I think by consolidating it, I believe we're already following this, but a lot of times you have to do a 15-foot buffer around every parcel. And I'm not checked in with fire or our current practices. I assume we're just doing a 15-foot buffer around the whole perimeter of all these properties as is. So I believe that's a current workload. It could be conveyed that we'd have to do, those 2 gray lines would be additional 30 feet of noxious weed buffer work that we could reduce. But from my understanding, it shan't change our workload.
I do one quick follow-up. So do we have to clear this with anyone, or we can just consider these 4 parcels a single unit for within our system as far as identifying the property?
My understanding is, yes, is the naming does not require us to turn it into one parcel or one lot, that we can utilize several parcels. Just like we do in Lithia Park, we have several parcels that all are Lithia Park. And I think over time, some of those parcels have been combined into a single parcel, or 2 parcels primarily. But, and I look to my parliamentarian to confirm that this is your authority and there's no other actions required.
And I just want to note for the record that in the financial considerations, you have no impact on the adopted operational budget. Has been identified for anybody listening. Anyone else on this one? So I think you're hearing that we're in alignment on moving forward on that. Commissioner Adams.
I'll vote for this when we do it. I continue to think that drawing new circles on maps is not the most important thing we can do. I don't have any problem with it. We can call it all acid castles. I'd rather that we were working on other stuff. I don't see that it actually has any impact for the positive or the negative. It's all acid castles. It's fine. I don't know.
Thank you for that. Just in general, on terms of what we have tonight, we didn't have a study session, and so most of this, what we have listed under business is basically study session stuff. It's all information. What second one there's an action, but it's really not an action item. It's information, same sort of thing we're going to be doing through the whole list here. Our actions were very simple tonight. We approved minutes and the consent agenda. So the next item, information, is the indoor facility use policy. And it looks like Deputy Director Dials will be taking that one.
Thank you. For the record, Rachel Dials, Deputy Director. So with adoption of the policy framework, we're reviewing and creating policies, procedures, and protocols for review. This current policy for the indoor facility use policy is for indoor facilities only, so things like the upcoming opening of Pioneer Hall and the Community Center, the Senior Center, the Grove, which would, this would mostly pertain to those facilities. Let's see. The policy itself is in your packet. It's a draft policy, and the policy outlines approved activities. So basically activities that align with our current mission. Things like birthday parties and baby showers, weddings and receptions, family reunions, recreational educational workshops and classes, local club and organization meetings, and non-commercial uses. It also, the policy addresses application and scheduling processes, so things like reserving as soon as possible, so at least 10 days ahead of time, refund policy, getting a hold of us at least 5 business days ahead of time, things like that. Insurance requirements, in most cases, we do require insurance to reserve facilities, and that's in alignment with the requirements set by the City of Ashland Risk Management, and that's in the policy as well. Conduct expectations, which would be things like using the facility the way that you reserved it, having a permit in order to use the facility, following the guidelines for prohibited items such as no glitter and confetti and sticking things on the wall, silly string, open flame, use of smoking, use of illegal drugs, things like that. And cancellation, conditions for denial or cancellation of use. So if you do this, then we could revoke your use into the future. So things like that.
Is this a new policy, or is this revising existing?
This is a new policy. We've
Okay,
had,
I thought so.
procedural things that have been into effect, but this would be a policy. So staff, looking for staff direction tonight. Do you support directing staff to begin the public comment period? And the public comment period is, I believe, 14 days. So we would put this draft policy on the website for 14 days, get feedback, and then bring it back to the commission in November for action. And are there additional questions and input?
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
My biggest question or concern was related to the liability insurance, and I guess looking for some clarification, particularly in regards to the second part of that sentence, requirement set forth by the City of Ashland's Risk Management, what those are specifically. So just as I was exploring this a little bit at home,
Yeah.
I was like, well, let's say, I mean, I'm not having any babies anytime soon, but let's say that I was hosting a baby shower at the cabin. And I had 30 people in attendance for a 3-hour party, pretty small event. I just plugged into one of these insurers that that does event insurance. $200 was the cost of that, which, especially like with prompting from our friends on City Council, like we've driven the cost of an event like that down so that it would
Right.
be accessible to people, where that $200 cost would, it would bump it way up.
Yeah.
And it seems like the kind of thing where 30 people doing a baby
Yeah.
shower are unlikely to do a whole lot of damage to Lydia Cabin.
Yeah, I think in most
at
cases,
least the baby
yeah.
showers I've been to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, in most
please tell me
cases,
more
I mean,
about-
our $2 million is what we require for, for like, I guess I would say like someone having alcohol in a facility, doing a big event, maybe where there's, 100 or more people there. But I think it depends on our risk. So our requirement's $2 million. If somebody's having a meeting with 20 people, we can look to risk management to see if we can lower that to $1 million. We wouldn't go lower than $1 million. There would still be a cost. But we do have to require something because of damage to the facility, things like that. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. And I mean, the legal department in conjunction with risk will do fact by fact situations if the circumstances seem to be appropriate to have a lower insurance. But certainly, I mean, having some insurance, because otherwise the people will be personally liable, which sure, the city can go after someone personally, but in reality, it's just better to have insurance.
Would you be reviewing every application or just ones that we send over?
Just ones that were requested to have a.
Okay,
a
so if we
special
flag
exception.
something that seems like it could be reduced, basically, or in some, I was responsible for liaison with a group when I was administrator in a school district for fireworks displays in a place that could be fires, and we were requiring back then $2 million, which doesn't sound like enough right now. So you have to do it. And the discretion then to flag something that could be reduced, and I don't remember the language, and I have it in front of me, but I'm not going to read it during the meeting. Is that in there, that staff has some discretion on what level of insurance to require? Because it probably should be there.
We have the discretion to go to legal, and they sign off on it. And so I think
Okay, that's
we
the same thing.
we have a basic checklist of prior practice that we utilize to kind of using the baby shower example is in that situation, staff would bring that forward and work to get a lower level. And we do this with other contracts as well. So if we have an instructor coming in, we have to have liability insurance there. We have the same sort of process that we go through for that.
Okay, so, and we're of course working very closely with risk management and legal on these things, and it's their call. If it's just that if you had any inkling that you needed more, or you could get by with less, you would contact them. Okay. Commissioner Gardner, and then Commissioner Weiner, and, no, okay.
Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, aren't any classes that instructors come to us to use facilities, they're required to have that $2 million insurance?
Yes.
Does that apply?
Unless there's flagged like a lower risk activity, like say there was like a painting class, and then we would work with legal and risk management to potentially lower the insurance. But that more high risk activities like any dancing, things like that are all at 2 million at this point.
And Commissioner Adams, you said that it's approximately $200 for that insurance?
Just the one website that I could find that would let me run through the questionnaire without sending them my email address. It was $200.
Yeah.
$200 for a 3-hour event with 20 people.
Right.
I can say that speaking from experience, when I rented a facility for my wedding, 16 years ago or however many years I got married, it was like $300 for the day. And that included like, liability insurance for alcohol and things like that. So.
Right. And then one follow-up. So would we intend to list the facilities in this policy that would apply here?
I think that we wouldn't. That would be more of a procedural thing, I believe, because in case we add to those facilities at some point, then we don't have to change the policy part. The policy would remain the same, correct?
So in other words, people would come and say, can I rent this facility? And then we'd say yay or nay and tell them what it was going to cost and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think we were going to utilize procedures as a way to get into details that are specific to a building, and this would be applied to all of our indoor facilities, and then our procedures would be the way that we'd address the specificity for the Pioneer Hall versus the Senior Center.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, and I just want to go back to the insurance thing. I guess I made an assumption as I read through that the insurance was part of the package that one acquired when they were renting and/or would get through the department. And it sounds like that's not the case, that they'd have to go to an outside vendor and find, and and it feels like there might be economy of scale or some sort of economy having the department have contracts that people, sort of like when you go rent a vehicle and you can, and they say, and do you want to, and do you have your own insurance or do you want to sign? You sign on, and so the department, the city would have a sort of an umbrella policy that they would have a buy-in to or something, some way of making it convenient and efficient so that people aren't. I mean, I've rented facilities in the past and haven't had to rent to get my own insurance because that was sort of part of the package deal, and I find that to be somewhat of a barrier and a complication.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a risk management decision. I mean, at some point, like the city walks around with risk, and it's just how does the city decide or whatever organization decide to allocate that.
Sounds like it's probably a decision that council would make in consultation with risk management if they wanted to change it. It doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't make sense for us as parks to try to go our own way from a risk management perspective in the rental of parks managed spaces.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a larger umbrella discussion.
Where does risk management lie? It's not in your office, is it?
It's with administration.
It's an administration office,
Yeah.
okay. But not the legal office specifically.
No, I mean, we work with risk, but
Okay.
Her name's Elizabeth Armitage. She is housed in HR, but HR is along with legal. is
They've
kind of
handled
administration.
risk, yeah, okay.
Can I ask one quick
One.
follow-up? So, correct me if I'm wrong, but why is $2 million the threshold?
Because that's the tort limit. So cities as a sovereign, you can only sue the city up to a certain amount, and that's about $2 million.
Right, and I think Rachel one time told me that was like the standard that most cities employ.
That's correct.
So it's not like we came up with it out of thin air.
And I didn't know that tort limit, that's the reason for that level.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd concept to wrap your head around, but the background for it is that you can't sue a sovereign, just like period. So the states and the feds are gracious in allowing people to sue us. So that's where the tort, it's a state statute. So that's where that comes into play.
Okay. Any more? Okay, I think you can go out for public comment.
Great, and then we'll bring it back in November.
We got Commissioner Lott.
Commissioner Lant.
Oh, good, thank you for noting that.
Good to go now, sir.
Commissioner Lott, you're on.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I think in general, the policy is reasonable. I have one little suggestion, and that is under rental guidelines, which is Roman numeral 7G. I think that item small Roman numeral XI and XII are a little out of place. They really don't fit there very well. And I think they would make more sense under general conditions, Roman numeral 6C, and it talks about things that are illegal, things that you can't do things that are against park policy or city policy or city rules. And I think writing there, just at the end of that sentence, just saying, including no smoking and no illegal drug use of any kind would actually handle that better than having it kind of buried down the bottom of some things that really are not very similar.
Sounds good to me. Anybody else have any objection to that small bit of word crafting there? Okay. So I think we're done with that one.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Next item is 3 under business, and Recreation Manager Lonnie Flora is going to present this one. It is court reservation procedure for pickleball and tennis.
All right, thank you. For the record, Lonnie Flora, Recreation Supervisor, and tonight I am bringing to the commission our court reservation procedure for both pickleball and tennis courts. And with the adoption of the policy framework, we're bringing this for commission feedback. So this procedure is going to address our process and eligibility for folks that want to reserve either pickleball courts or tennis courts. It also outlines how we're going to handle cancellations and refunds, enforcing the rules, what we do if people violate the rules, and also about disclaimers and the issue of liability when people use the courts. So the goal of this is to really provide a framework that allows us to be equitable and serve everyone equally. And with this information being in your packet, we're wanting to hear feedback and answer questions about this procedure, and that's about it.
Okay, just a couple, again, clarifying, I hope for other people who are at home or may not have read the packet. This applies to some courts, not all courts.
Correct.
We're gonna do the reservation, we're gonna leave some courts as 100% walk-on, okay? And if there are no reservations on a particular court, how would someone know that, and could they walk on then?
Yes.
I just want to be
so
sure that this all ties together with other things we've discussed.
we are currently working on updating and improving our signage at the courts, which would include how people would show that they have a reservation to other people that are using the courts at that time. So that is something that we're developing along with posting signage of all the other rules for usage at the courts.
We are also asking people who do reserve during the certain timeframes that are available, that they have their permit with them, whether it's a screenshot of the permit with the date, it would include the date and the time, in case there is a conflict.
Thank you.
I just could envision somebody playing, and then you show up with your reservation, and they would
We'll also,
politely
yeah,
leave.
we'll also have the courts, those particular courts, both at tennis and pickleball, signed that will say these courts are available for reservation with the information on them specifically. And there will only be 2 courts at each facility that will be available for reservation. The rest will be open play.
I think I'm getting ahead of this, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. Is there a way to have a posting of the current day's reservations so that when people come to play, they know somebody's going to be showing up?
That's something we haven't figured out yet
Okay.
because of the staff time associated with that.
That sounds like
So,
administrative effort.
yeah.
In our reservation system online, there is a publicly viewable calendar. So it would show, it wouldn't show any other information other than the courts are reserved at that time. So if people were wondering, they could go online if they have reception, which may not be at the pickleball courts. So we're aware that these can be some difficulties, but like Rachel said, we would have some information posted as to what the use permit will show, what it looks like when people have a valid use permit, the times, which we are going to keep fairly limited for when people can reserve, so that we can manage this accordingly, be able to be agile and address any of these pitfalls, because it is a kind of a new process for us.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, I think looking at the procedure that's in the packet. It's light on details, and that makes sense to me to a certain extent for procedure of this type. However, I think especially for the public, the devil is in the details that we're just starting to talk about. And I'd love to hear some of those in this forum, what the plan is. I heard 2 courts at each facility. I'd love to hear about prices. I'd love to hear about how sports clubs and teams fit into this. I imagine that the tennis team has dibs on the Hunter Park tennis courts during tennis season. Reservations for tournaments that might go beyond those 2 courts. Could you just fill us? I honestly don't know some of these details, so if you could fill me and the rest of the curious public in, that would be wonderful. And I see David over there taking notes too.
Yes, so on the issue of the teams and tournaments, things of that nature, we do work with a handful of organizations. Those are outlined in agreements, so we have both insurance documents on file and a signed agreement that allows us to kind of expand what those groups can reserve. And in those instances, Ollie is a good example at the university of using more than 2 pickleball courts for classes. And that's done in an agreement form, so.
And another example would be, like you just mentioned, the high school tennis team. We have a separate agreement with high school for use of facilities throughout the park system. And one of those is the tennis courts, and that falls outside of, they would have use of all 8 of the tennis courts for their practices during the season, and we sign accordingly on site. I think another example could be if this happens throughout the park system, someone teaching and getting paid to teach and using the courts and for teaching, we would, there would be an expectation for those people those instructors to be reserving courts when they can. And that would fall into this as well. So that's kind of I guess some of the differences. Ashland Tennis and Fitness Club, we have a agreement with Ashland Tennis and Fitness Club. They do tournaments in the summertime, and that would be outside of this procedure as well. So, and then, do you want to address the other?
Yeah, for other of those details that folks are looking for, we will have the majority of those listed online, and we have a dedicated tennis and a dedicated pickleball court webpage that we don't want to put 1,000 lines of information up on signs at the court, so we are directing people to the website so that we can explain how the process works, how you sign up for the courts, the days, times, the fees, which are set by the adopted fees by council and all those details. Does that answer your question? Anything?
I would add is that we have the calendaring, so we're working at. Most special events we can reserve 11 months in advance, so we can get those blocked out well in advance. The high school is supposed to give us their calendar in August for the next season. So again, sometimes knowing when a home game and those others come a little later, but again, we have a lot of that stuff well in advance, so then most people aren't gonna schedule 4 months in advance to come play tennis. It's more of a last minute, I'm in town, or I want to make sure I can have it. And so those are our assumptions, is that people aren't going to be reserving. If we did have a conflict where we had one reservation for 1 hour, we have the authority to work with that person to relocate it or cancel it for another event. So we have those options as well to ensure the economic development of those bigger issues are being dealt with.
And I would just add that Commissioner Adams asked about the fee and the fees associated with reserving courts. Those, and again, I'm going to reiterate, there's 2 courts at each facility that will be available for reservation, and the cost of those will be $20 per hour per court.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. I'm sorry, Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you. So just to follow up to that, so how long can you reserve a court for? Can you only reserve, like if if somebody's teaching tennis, can they reserve the court all day?
No. So what we're going to be operating with to start will be a minimum of 1 hour, a maximum of 2 hours. And that's per person per day.
Okay.
And
However,
we may
if there's an
find,
agreement in a special use permit, there's different parameters for that.
Right, I get that, but just, just for, as people are finding out that there's reservable courts, I was just wondering if there's a limit, because, if a guy's teaching a class, he could reserve for the whole day and probably make a bunch of money. And no one else would be able to play on the court, which I don't know that would be what we want.
some other of those specifics too about the reservable window of time that we're looking at is starting with only Tuesday and Thursday, 2 days a week, during the hours of 1 p.m., I think, till 6 p.m., which allows us to be pretty confident that we're going to have staff around in case there are situations that need to be addressed immediately. And again, until we get our, really get things ironed out.
We're trying to live into this a little bit and really monitor how things are going and adjust when we need to adjust. So we're starting small.
It's going to be a learning curve for everybody.
Just one quick follow-up then. You probably already said, so how far in advance do you have to reserve a 1 hour court?
That, because of the ability of our online reservation system, I think we're only looking for about a couple of hours
Okay.
ahead of time, but no more than I think.
I thought we were looking to
2
do it at
weeks.
24-hour notice, or closing it off 24 hours before. Or are you saying how soon? Because you can't do
No,
it
I
up to
just
11
meant like
months
how
before.
much, could somebody show up and then just go on their phone and go online and rent the court showing up, while there's a.
Not with their current cell coverage, they couldn't.
What? Yeah, right. No cell service, but, no, I was just curious, because those things come up. I mean, if you have, 8 people playing on a court and then, and they've already gone online and they've looked and it hasn't been reserved, and then somebody shows up and says, oh, I just reserved it, you guys, it might create some conflict for park staff.
Lonnie, can that happen? Can you address
Um,
I thought we had a 24-hour blackout.
I
Yeah,
will
the day
go back
before.
and we can set those parameters. So I appreciate the feedback and we can look into that. I think it was set at about, I want to say 2, but it could have been 4 hours in advance that they could reserve. But then there's also the cancellation time window of, when they can and can't
Okay,
cancel.
so we'll be hearing about those details in the future.
Yep.
Commissioner Weiner, then Commissioner Lott.
Thanks. I just have a quick follow-up to that question discussion and then my primary question. But I thought there was a policy that did not allow people to, without special use permits, to vend anything such as lessons within the park. But now we're talking about go ahead and reserve the court to teach tennis lessons. So have we changed that policy, or is there a special use that these individuals would be required to get in order to be able to teach?
My understanding is it's about the transfer of funds on site. So if you come to a public park and you have a lesson that you paid for a month ago and it's open, you can use it just like any other user. However, if you show up on site and you give your tennis coach or your pickleball coach $100 for the lesson, that's the violation, is my understanding of our rule.
Okay.
That's our rule, or is that a state rule?
It's
Or
an ordinance, I think.
I believe it's an ordinance.
okay, in an ordinance. Okay,
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head, so I'd
okay,
confirm with,
We'll
I
double
guess-
check that and follow up.
thanks.
I mean, that was not my interpretation of it, but so, which is fine, because I could easily have misunderstood the nuance of it. My question relates to the enforcement clause that was written into this, APRD, so 5A 1I, APRD staff determine and enforce times, locations, and availability, and then relates to number 8A, under enforcement and violations, only APR staff have enforcement authority. But historically, the public has been advised that the APRD staff have no enforcement authority or intention, and have been advised to contact APD instead. Have we changed that policy? Is that a new approach? Is that a different?
So I think APD is enforcing ordinances and writing tickets or doing trespass. This is a procedural. So if we have an infraction, we have the authority to go in there and say that you're not following the reservation correctly, and can then terminate that reservation. Now, depending on how that situation, we may call APD as well to help support us.
So if someone's violating Ashland Municipal Code in any of your facilities, APRD will not be involved. But if they're violating a rule such as not letting people take turns playing pickleball, that's when APRD would be called?
Correct. So like on a special use permit, if we have a violator, we would let that person know that we're not going to work with them next time. You're not welcome to come back. And that would be a similar situation here, because there is no, gosh darn it, I'm going to say felony or misdemeanor. There's no charges that would be. It's more of an administrative review. So it is different in regards to that, but this is consistent how we manage our other permitted activities.
I guess the closest thing I could compare it to would be the special use permits or special event permits that we're giving to like Ashland Folk Collective and Epic Ashland. Like, we have agreements in place with them to do certain things in the park, and then we have staff, that's around and on site, and if something is not being followed, we as staff address that with them as part of the special use permit or special event. So the same thing could be said for someone renting a pickleball court or a tennis court and then not following the procedure.
And
And there'd be a specific phone number that they would know to call, that would have someone available, that would be able to, so theoretically, this would only function during, and it sounded like you said the hours are only going to be, for the renting of it, would only be during office hours type of thing. So
Yeah, that'll be on the sign as well.
and an example of municipal code would be leash law. Dog's supposed to be on a leash, except when they're in a dog off-leash area, so that could be a call to the APD. PD, yeah. Okay, done? Commissioner Lunt?
I get why there's a desire to not be specific, but I keep hearing things like, well, it's only 2 courts is all that you can rent, or there's a maximum minimum number of hours, but I don't see it written anywhere, and I think that's problematic. Those are pretty key kind of items, and I just think this policy is kind of missing the things that we've emphasized as we discussed it, but yet they aren't written down. And I don't understand that, and I don't agree with it.
So a question for staff is, would that be something that's in a policy, or would it be in a protocol or a procedure?
I believe that we could place those elements in the procedure in regards to the allowable rental times. We could put it there to where we could identify. The nuance would be is if we changed in 6 months to open it up to 3 days a week, or those hours, that we would bring a procedure back to make that modification. So I think that's where staff was trying to create an FAQ sheet or something like that that would provide that information, but it wouldn't be captured in the procedure itself.
Should the procedure note that?
That's a great work around.
Okay.
And what we'll do is work on the sheet and make sure that we get that out of those elements we talked about tonight. That would be that appendix or that reference document.
This is a general problem for any kind of code writing, which is the policy, we don't want to change it a lot. And so there has to be a way to modify the operating environment from time to time without having to redo the policy. And I don't know what level, and Commissioner Long was going to speak here in a second again. I don't know where, in any given policy, in any given area of our operation, where that is. But it's something we have to determine for the policy approvers up here, that we are clear on, if we approve this policy, that that the whole system hangs together so that somebody knows which courts, which facilities are reservable or not, that sort of thing. Even if it's not written in the policy, it's clearly pointed to.
So I just want to.
Commissioner Lott, oh, you want to talk about that?
I just want to talk about what you just said. I just want to make sure I'm clear. So putting something in the procedure like,
see such and such
see the
for
website
specific,
for specific details
courts.
on,
Yeah.
because on the website, the how-tos as far as how somebody would reserve a court would all be on the website for them. So putting something like that in the policy, the procedure would be good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Well,
piece.
that's what I'm just thinking out loud right
Yeah.
now. We're not acting today, we're just discussing. Commissioner Long.
Well, I'm looking at the packet, and this is not a policy.
It's a
It's listed
procedure.
It's listed
I'm
as a
sorry.
procedure.
I'm calling it a policy, yeah.
And I believe that procedures don't necessarily require commission approval.
That's
Correct.
Is that
correct.
not correct?
You are correct. I've been calling it a policy, it's a procedure.
So we should put in the policy all these details, because staff can change them whenever they want.
Right, and we're not going to approve this. We're just giving
Giving
feedback to staff that that's what we would want to see in it. We're giving you your feedback. Commissioner Adams.
It's almost like, I mean, I think fundamentally I agree with Commissioner Lott, like, there's a procedure, let's put all the details in, you guys write it up. It almost seems like what we're sort of talking about here, which we may not need, is you're sort of like talking about a policy, and I get that's not what's in the packet. You're talking about a policy which says, is it okay that we as staff reserve tennis and pickleball courts? And I'll speak for myself as a commissioner. Yeah, that's fine. If you want to, and it's almost like what's written here is more like a policy, right? Which is staff wants to create some details around reserving pickleball courts, which would then be the procedure, right? That you don't need approval from us on. I'm not sure that we actually need to approve a policy like this. That I kind of agree with Commissioner Lott, like just put all the details in. You can give it to us for editing feedback if you want. We don't even necessarily need to vote on it.
Okay, anything from anybody else? Well,
One clarifying question
Yes.
for direction is, if staff adds the details into the procedure that outlines the specificity that we discussed here, would you like to review it one more time? Or with what we talked about, as long as those details are in there and it's clear of when it's available, how long you can rent it for, and there was one third element that I'm missing, that those were the core issues, and if we have to bring back a procedure because we want to open that up in the future, it's not a huge lift for us, except for putting it on our study session to let you know the change.
No, I don't think you need to. I think we're clear on the difference between a policy and a procedure. I blurred it earlier, but Commissioner Lon straightened that out. So what we're doing is giving you feedback on an operational item that you wanted to be sure you were comfortable with, that we would be comfortable with it, but it's not a policy decision. That's confusing to some people, but we're working through it. Okay. Everybody
If I
done
can-
now?
Sorry, if I can just mention one more thing. We did
Please.
we did send this procedure out to the RDAC committee ahead of time, so they were able to give feedback on the procedure prior to this meeting, so I did want to let you all know
Excellent.
that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you,
All right, thank you.
Lonnie. Okay, so now we're on to workplace attire protocol. And that'll be Director Houston.
Thank you. So many months ago, I said we were going to start working on updating our policies, procedures, and protocols, and tonight is a full reflection of that. And so with that adoption of the policy framework policy, the process we should do when we're setting up standards or protocols is to write them up and bring them forward. And so what we're looking to do is set a protocol that addresses the establishment of guidelines for uniform and work attire. The protocol addresses the establishment of uniform standards, so when we have logo gear, establishment of uniform guidelines by division of programs. So if you're in park operations, you have different work needs, and so as such, your logo gear is going to look different versus if you're in administration or a lifeguard, and all those have different elements. And it outlines the administration of uniform items. Additionally, it defines general work attire, so essentially no athletic gear, no sweats, no running shorts. Otherwise, they're pretty straightforward, as well as it identifies that, as supervisors, management, we should be modeling the way we should be wearing, and PPE is omitted from that because PPE takes preference over everything else. And with that, I think with the park operations, they have to work pants based off the work they're doing, so that's identified there. So are there any additional questions or input on this draft protocol?
And I'll just point out that these logo items that you are developing are in the budget. So this is not a budget item for us.
Correct. There's already $8,500 in each year's budget for uniforms.
Okay. Other questions, comments? I'll start over here. Commissioner Gardner.
So has there been a workplace attire policy?
I don't believe we currently have one. We buy logo gear and have had uniform items that I would call uniform because they have our logo on them and they are acquired by the department, but I don't believe we have a current attire or uniform policy.
So
protocol.
has it been a problem to get individuals to dress appropriately?
Well, great question. We don't have anything to where we can state that you wear uniform items one way or the other. So for me, the brand is important, and I want to make sure that when we are out there representing and approaching people to educate them or do compliance at the pickleball or tennis court, because there's a conflict there, that we're easily identifiable and that from a distance you can identify that we're supposed to be there. Right now we have a mixture where we have some t-shirts and jackets and hats that are used commingled with other logo gear from other companies, other brands, and so this is just to provide some consistency there and to ensure that when we do go out to a public meeting like tonight, that if we don't have a logo gear, we have our ID there just so that people can talk to us and they know that we're here for parks.
Can I ask one quick follow-up? So I noticed reading through it, so it's going to be that they can't wear any other baseball cap other than a park and rec cap, is that correct?
Correct, unless it's a PPE item that we don't provide, like a sun hat if we didn't have a sun hat or a snuggly, what do they call those?
Beanie?
Beanie cap.
Oh,
yes.
okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anything? I see Commissioner Lunt first, and then Commissioner Adams.
I'm just wondering, it looks like this isn't, it's a pretty rough draft. I don't understand Roman numeral 2B, Roman numeral 2B. It looks like it's asking questions rather than being part of a protocol. And then the same with 4G. I really don't understand 4G at all, what that's all about.
You are correct on 2B. I think that's a reference to if a code or rule is referenced, the format that's supposed to be in. And 4G, I don't have it in front of me, so I won't be able to address that, but I will look into that, and we'll make sure it is a finished product before we move it forward to legal and adoption.
Thank you.
Oh.
I had sort of a couple of nuts and bolts questions. Well, I guess actually one nuts and bolts question first is how much logo apparel would you, and here I guess I'm speaking specifically about operations staff where it seems like the clothing items that would be appropriate for them would be fairly narrow. How many logo item pieces of clothing would you anticipate that they would need? You know, I'm counting like if you've got a 5-day work week, you probably need 5-ish t-shirts, logo jacket, 1 to 2 logo hats, perhaps one of those being a beanie. I think I have seen APRD beanies. And do our staff have that amount of clothing?
It's a mixture of what they have now. So what I've seen is a variety of different jackets of thickness, Gore-Tex, old duck Carhartt jackets, et cetera. So there is a, depending on how long you've been here, there's typically t-shirts of a couple different sizes, either long sleeve or short sleeve t-shirts. Sweatshirts is something that they currently have. And then we have some rain gear as well that's logoed, and hats and those beanie caps is primarily what it is. Right now, what we're looking to do is get people to 6 shirts. So we're this year we're buying 4 that are going to be in all in the same format, and then every year we'd be looking at replacing 2 to 3 and exchange old stuff for new to continue to make sure we've got the best and shiniest hats. It's when they start to look dull, we want to switch them out. And it's amazing how the sun and sweat can really change the color on some of those hats and or the quality. You really figure out the different qualities of hats. And jackets. And so we want to make sure that we have a lightweight jacket or a heavy 3-season sort of jacket for people. We're looking at rain gear as well. And it's been back and forth there that sometimes we bought that, sometimes we don't. We're looking at our budget to see what we can do. We also provide a $300 stipend a year to staff for boots and additional uniform items. And so if they were to use that for our logo gear, we would have a mechanism for them to do that as well. And for me, I just want to make sure is when we have our logo on, our uniform on, is that we're representing. I've been other places where people wear their uniform items, or a person no longer works there and they've got their uniform and they're in a place and behaviors that aren't the best representation. And so that's part of the other thing that we're trying to do there is take control of that input-output of those items. So it's a budget, and it's just the basics. The shirts for admin, it's going to be 2 shirts. Unless you're at the golf course, we'll have a few more because, again, they're more operationally having there. We want to make sure, they're bright and shiny, and everyone knows that they're part of the parks instead of Oak Knoll as a separate logo or other things.
So just, I want to be clear that these shirts are supplied by the department to the
Yes.
employee. Thank you.
Thank you. That, yeah, exactly the nuts and bolts answer I was looking for my nuts and bolts question. I was curious if there's what feedback you've gotten from line staff, if there's any concerns with this policy and how you're working through that with them.
It's varied. Some are supportive of it, have no concerns. I think others having any control, someone saying what I can and can't wear is always troubling. And so there are a few that I've heard, not directly to me, but rumblings that it's just, shucks, we're going to have to follow something now. So have a new process or policy to follow.
We could point out other departments have uniforms,
Yes.
like the police department, the fire department. I don't know about Public Works. Do they have some sort of uniform code?
If you work in the road right-of-way, they have type 2 reflective shirts that are issued from a PPE perspective. And this last month, we set up to where people did the old sticker exercise and chose a color or colors, depending upon whether and stuff. So again, we're still working to try to engage, and then had the ordering where we had different types of shirts that people could select from, and or jackets, to where if you didn't want a heavy jacket, there was a vest or a lightweight jacket. So we were, again, trying to be as diverse as we can given our resources.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, that brings us to our last business item, which is trail management protocol. Again, that'll be Director Houston.
Thank you. Excuse me. The situation is that we currently don't have a written protocol or procedure in regards to how we manage our trails. We have a lot of oral history and processes that people have been here for a while know what to do, to certain speak, and some standards. However, we're just trying to get that codified into our protocol, which is the framework that we've had. And we've brought this forward to our Trails Advisory Committee. I'll be transparent, and they're not in support of this protocol. I believe, if I'm summarizing some of the concerns I heard, is it appears to be bureaucratic, that there's a concern that it could increase liability and risk based off of having a trail difficulty rating, which we did check in with risk and with legal on that, and currently don't have any feedback that says that we shouldn't do it. The protocol is addressing 5 core issues, which is developing a data dictionary, for lack of a better word, for our staff for managing our trails, which is determining a trail type, which is at natural surface or hard surface. Trail class based off of the development level. Each one of those development classes has different operational, maintenance, and development requirements. The managed use, which is what we do right now. So on our GIS layer and how we sign our trails, it's who's allowed to use the trail. The designed use is, so out of those users, there's usually one user that's going to be you have to design for. So maybe it's a road and a trail, and so your designed use is going to be for a road, and so you'd be building it to a road standard versus a natural surface 18-inch trail. And then trail difficulty. There'd be 5 levels of difficulty based on the trail width, surface, grade, and obstacles, which would be a mechanism. Whether it's the full trail length, it could be segmented as well based off of opt-out lines as well as trail connections and those things. All of these things aren't going to happen overnight. So if we do implement this protocol, it will take us time to collect the data and go through that process. The goal here is to give park operations a better understanding of our trail system, just like we do for playgrounds and parklands, restrooms, and all those other things, to help us hopefully do a better job. Additionally, this protocol outlines trail planning and the kind of plans that we'd be utilizing to move forward trail activities or new trail proposals in the future. With that, are there any questions or input on this draft protocol?
I certainly have some comments, but
Commissioner Adams?
So I'm the liaison for this committee. I told Director Houston in advance that I was frustrated that this was brought through against the unanimous recommendation of the committee. So it wasn't a majority, but actually unanimous that it not be brought forward. I think it shows a certain disdain for feedback from the public that we're moving this forward. And then I'll share the concerns of the members of the committee as I understand it on this protocol. So there was some concern about risk. I'll get into that in a moment, but probably the biggest concern is when you take our trails and you create rules to define a trail type, trail widths. What it would essentially do is it would make most, if not all, of the trails in our current trail system to be non-conforming with this policy, which in effect creates a body of work that at least it implies that we need to do to make our trails conform to the policy, right? That if you have a trail where parts of it are multi-use, parts of it are mountain bike only, parts of it are pedestrian traffic only as we currently have, or a trail where some parts of it are 18 inches wide, some parts of it are 24 inches wide. It's sort of non-conforming to these different policies. So it's maybe like the bureaucratic version of it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, would be if it ain't broke, don't define it as broke, so you feel obligated to fix it. And so I think essentially what the Trail Committee was saying is, we've got a pretty good trail system now, and there seems to be a strong interest from the public via the PROS plan to create more trails. And so instead of defining our current trails as broke so that our imperative becomes to fix them, why don't we just say, hey, we got the trails we got, and we like them, and we'd like to have some more. And we, or the members of the committee that I'm speaking for currently, didn't see a utility in this policy. Regarding the risk, the idea was that if the city defines a trail by, and this would probably apply most specifically to mountain biking, if it defines it at a certain level, somebody gets hurt and says that the definition of the level was wrong. In my understanding, and you can speak to this, Carmel, it pushes us a little bit to the edge of recreational immunity. So for example, like if you look on Trail Forks right now where they get around the liability piece because it's sort of like crowdfunded and it's not that Trail Forks is saying that a trail's at a certain level, it's that all the users are. They define Jabberwocky Trail, which is perhaps our most popular bike trail, as a blue intermediate trail. And most of it is. There's one section right before you cross Stark Trail where there's pretty significant rock in the middle of the trail. So let's say somebody hits that rock, they fly off the edge, it's a pretty steep edge, and they get hurt. And they say, the city of Ashland told me this was an intermediate bike trail. This is very clearly not an intermediate feature. It's grossly negligent to say so. Now I get that feature is probably actually on Forest Service land, so I'm just using it as an example. And I got hurt, and I'm going to sue the city for that. BTI would be a better example, but I'm not going to I'm not going to put you guys all through that again. So that was the concern around recreation. So I think I would speak on behalf of the Trails Advisory Committee saying that their recommendation was that we not move this policy forward.
Commissioner Weiner, then Commissioner Lunt.
Yeah, and thanks for that clarity. That was one of my concerns, was that this was sort of brought forward with a little bit of commentary about, well, the Trails Advisory Committee wasn't in favor of it, but, and then a presentation of the thing, rather than really, we didn't have all the information from the Trails Advisory. Why do we have an advisory committee if we don't get their advice? Like, right? So how are we supposed to be getting their advice? I imagine we could go to their thing and we could read the minutes to their meetings if they were available in a timely enough manner. But I really do think if we're going to have an advisory committee, then all of their input should be part of any presentation related to any decision that we're going to be making. And I'm happy to hear both sides of it in that context, but I'd want to hear it. I think looking at this a little further, and it sort of relates back to a comment I made either at the last meeting or a meeting before, and it's always the question of why. Well, why would we do this if, and it's sort of that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, we predominantly, the trails, other than those within Lithia Park and maybe some of the front country parks, are managed by volunteers. Parks Department's not really involved with that at all. And they are quite varied top to bottom, and so defining them would be challenged. It sounds like a large body of work to fix something that isn't really been a problem, that the parks historically hasn't managed, wouldn't that effort really best be spent doing some of the other stuff that does need help? I guess would be, like, those are my comments. I guess there's not really a question there. I apologize.
That's all right. Thank you. Commissioner Long.
Was wondering in the scope in Roman numeral 2, why the park commissioners were singled out. I didn't quite understand that.
Can you refer to what section again, sir?
Roman numeral 2, which I believe is scope.
And again, pardon me, I gave my copy of the element to the chair.
So it reads, this protocol applies to the public, park commissioners, and department staff. That's the scope. Roman numeral 2 under the protocol.
So my recollection of why I put that in there was to, because the trail planning and the work that we'll be doing for trail planning, many of those things would be coming to the Park Commission, as well as would be future projects and budgets associated with the Trails program. So our operational efforts for the Trails program this protocol would get to you through those work products.
Well, follow up, please. I still don't quite get it because it says applies to, and that's different than it comes before us and we have to make a decision about it.
Yeah, that's kind of a distinction we were discussing early on in the policy conversation, which is it doesn't control our behavior. So doesn't apply to us. I guess that's what I'll translate what I think I'm hearing from Commissioner Long.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, that would be an edit.
Okay. I want to point out this is a draft, and I agree, and I'm just one person up here. I agree with particularly how Commissioner Weiner framed it, which is the intent of having an advisory commission is to seek and honor their advice. So I think there's just more work to be done. But I understand a protocol is a departmental issue, but if our advisory committee is not on board with it yet, there's probably just some more work to be done. I mean, is this a revision issue or not? No. Okay.
No, in fact, the Trails Advisory Committee has said, please don't bring this in front of us again.
Okay,
We would like, their advice to us is that we set this aside.
Okay.
They're not looking for an edited version of this document that defines the scope differently. They're looking for, their recommendation is that we set the notion of breaking our trails into particular categories and definitions aside.
And as I understand it, if you were to look at, I don't know, any of the trails, different sections would have different categorizations. Okay.
Now, one thing I should say along with this is there's a notion of like, well, okay, we've got the trail system we have, but there are standards and protocols out there, and so when we're thinking about building new trails, we should consider those. And that is actually built into the trails application process already, that there are sections when you're applying to a new trail to ask what standards you adhere to. And there are trail building standards set forth for both pedestrian trails and mountain bike
And
trails.
who, is that outside the city? We've developed those over time? Or is there
it's
are there
generally.
best practices from trail building
Exactly,
professionals?
Exactly.
Okay.
And most of what's in this document, for the record, I thought Ethan Brock, one of the members of the committee who used to work with OSU, said, nothing in here is new. I saw all of this stuff at OSU. So I don't think, like, Rocky's not reinventing the wheel here. It's sort of like, where do we apply these standards? And I think the suggestion of the committee, as I hear it, is it's part of the trails application. If you're gonna apply to build a new trail, then talk about what standards you're adhering to. It's part of the application. It's one of the questions.
Okay, so there is a place for it. It's in the application process. That's an opinion. Okay, I'm just going to ask, I want all the
Commissioner Long,
commissioners
yeah.
to speak, and then I want you to just try to synthesize it all and tell us why you're trying to do it and what you think about what we're talking about. Commissioner Long, and then Commissioner Gardner.
Well, I'm not ready to just throw this out. I think that the view that this doesn't work with our trail system is maybe a rigid reading of the protocol as written. But I also think that we should have had a bit more of the. We don't need to follow the recommendations of any of the subcommittees, but we do need to hear them. And it was an omission that they weren't included in the more thoroughly in the staff report. And then moving on one step further, I do want to point out in the section Roman numeral 5B5, which is the table on the last section or last row, is trail difficulty. And it does a really good job, except there's just this little minor thing which it says obstacles 15 or less and 15 or more, and everywhere else it doesn't overlap, and so this puts that 15 in both categories. So it's a minor thing, but
Good point.
since you did it right in every other case, might as well get it right in that one too.
Good point. Commissioner Gardner.
So my question would be, the heading for this protocol is trails management, and trails classification. So I guess I'm still unclear, and I'll direct this to Commissioner Adams. So was the TAC against everything that's in here, or just the classifications? Because some of it appears to be relevant to new trails and maybe trail maintenance as well. And, really, compared to some of the other protocols, this is a fairly lengthy list of, a lot of things. And, I don't know all the terms, but I'm just wondering, was the advisory committee, like, they don't want to have any maintenance or protocol for establishing new trails? Because that seems like that would fall into this as well.
Yeah, I think you're referring here to items C and D under V,
I just kind of reading through them, and I see things that aren't necessarily identifying the class of trails,
Right.
but, I don't know, it just seems like much of the information might be relevant to, the reason we're developing this system is so somebody in the future could come in and say, what's our procedure or protocol for developing a new trail if somebody comes forward, and it seems like that would exist in something like this.
Yeah, I didn't, from the committee hear particular concerns with, again, I think you're mostly referring to the last two sections, which would be sections C and D, which give some flesh to
Well, yeah,
trail planning and trail development.
Right,
Most
especially
of the
those
rest of
two.
the document, it seems like, has to do with categorization of and designated uses of trails. So, yeah, I don't know that they gave much voice to it. I don't get the sense that the committee would be opposed to creating some protocols around trail planning and trail development. There were some issues with earlier versions around trail maintenance where it seemed like the document was referring to hours of staff time that would be required to maintain our trails, and the issue around that, as Commissioner Weiner pointed out, and actually Jason Minica pointed out at the meeting, is that most of our trails are maintained. I think the number that Jason gave was 80-20, 80% by volunteers, 20% by staff, and it would seem to, again, it seemed like there was a risk of defining that we don't have enough staff time to maintain the trails when in fact the public has done that for decades and decades.
Yeah.
But I don't think there would necessarily be a problem with something that involved the last two paragraphs, but it's a
Right.
small part of the document.
And just my final comment would be, is it seems when staff brings something like this to us or even to the TAC, to just say, no, we're gonna throw it out. I mean, it almost sounds as disrespectful as we didn't take the advice of the advisory committee, and brought it forward. So I think I don't really know where we go from here, but
Well, that's what I'm going to ask
Yeah.
Director Houston to weigh in on.
So the trail management protocols are, I'll call it Trails 101 from an operational and a maintenance side. We have, and I think most of the trail system that is in discussion and being referenced, or the concerns is our trails in the watershed. The rest of the trail system, I think I don't think there's the same concerns there, because I don't think our trail standard in width and grade and obstacles vary as significantly as it does up there. So the flip side is we're liable for anything that occurs up there, whether we built it, we maintain it or not. We, the city, are liable for those things. We have a responsibility to have some semblance of understanding of what is out there and what condition it is in. And this is the platform that helps us to start to talk about that and be able to start to identify. If we don't have an established trail standard that we've adopted, I've heard that sometimes we use the Forest Service trail standards up in the watershed. Sometimes I've heard an IMBA or BLM has new standards out that are based off of IMBA standards as well. So there are tools out there. There's a Pacific Crest trail standard in school. There's a lot of different variations. They're all fundamentally very similar in regards. However, we haven't established, and right now the system is every applicant that comes in with a trail proposal is telling us how they're going to do it. And now it's our advisory committee and staff's responsibility to say yes or no. It's easier if we have our own standards and say, you're going to build this trail to this certain class. These are my words, and sometimes that means it's to a community trail standard or it's to a backcountry trail or single track standard. And it allows us to ensure what we have going on up there being constructed in the future or maintained is in those parameters, so we have some semblance of control over what is being constructed up there or being maintained, so that when we do have an issue come, the flip side is someone comes and says, I got hurt on that rock and it's on our property. What rock? What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. That then is now showing a different type of issue that's even easier to lose if we are getting sued, and that's neglect or negligence in regards to our due diligence. So if we don't have some semblance of management and standards, and I've said it and I'll say it again, is I know nothing's going to happen overnight, but it allows us to then build plans. Then we should be looking at having those trails in the watershed be adopted and financially responsible by those adopters, and then we have a different role and relationship, and we're no longer responsible for the hypothetical injury that occurs up there. That now we have another nonprofit or other entity who is responsible for those things. So I did listen, and they were uncomfortable meetings. I didn't get to go to the last one because I had a conflict, but I got a good summary from staff that was there. And I felt strongly that we need this just like we have for all the other elements that we have. And it's not going to change the 80-20%. The next step for me is to try to identify of those trails up there, who is actually maintaining those. And so we have responsible parties so that we can check in and make sure that Jabberwocky or now I can't even think of the other trail names because I just don't know Alice in Wonder well enough. I need to read that. Are being maintained so we can check in as staff. So hopefully we can provide more support and as well as make sure that we have some confidence. I haven't been on all those trails. I'll be the first to admit that. Hopefully in 9 months I'll be able to ride a mountain bike again, or I'll have to hoof all of them and jump out of the way when I'm on the wrong trail, and hopefully have my blaze orange stuff on so that and a little bell dingling so people can see me coming. But that's why it moved forward, because from my perspective they're pretty benign elements. I didn't view it through the same view of the feedback that I have, and my intention isn't to use this as a tool to close things, but to improve it. My understanding is this community wants to increase people coming here and using our trail system and developing a broader connection to the Jack Ash Trail over to Sterling Mine Ditch and other places. And as such, it's our diligence to make sure that they have a good experience. One way to those is letting them know in advance, whether it's through crowdsourcing, that is one way, or when you get there you see a double black diamond or a blue square or a green circle. If you go to Mount Ashland, what do you see at every ski slope? Why do you think they have double black diamond, blue diamond, the thing? It's again to help mitigate risk. And so that's where I'm coming from. However, if I've got a consensus of you, the commissioners, who don't feel that this is ready, we'll go back to work. But omission of elements still doesn't address the operational things that we're trying to get accomplished.
Thank you. I think also at some point I'm resonating, what Commissioner Adams says resonates, which is the idea of the application process addressing some of this, or it's part of the application process. These classification protocol, it's almost more of a system that you would use in the evaluation of new trails, but then it could be applicable to old trails to bring them up to standard over 2 decades. I mean, in other words, it wouldn't be next week. So I think there's just some work, there's some messaging going on here to pull it all together. I understand your need for some kind of a management tool. So we don't want to not have the management tool, but we also want to implement whatever, particularly the idea of the creation of new trails. We don't want to stop creating new trails while we're working this out. So there's a multifaceted, complex issue here that we just have to keep wrestling with. Commissioner Lunt, then we're going to kind of wrap this up for tonight.
I think that the application should be integrated with the protocol. In other words, that's where the application, that's not the way, we've got the application first, but in the long run, the application should be coming from what's set forth in the protocol.
Yeah, there's it's a management issue. In other words, it's operational. So it is a protocol. I don't think there's any policy issues here. So I agree that it's a unified effort we're approaching it now because as with everything else you've done since you got here is you're trying to bring some consistency to the way we've asked you to do best management practices, and this is your attempt to do that with trails. And so we just have to sort that out. What is the best practice? And educating us, and we're not there yet, I guess, based on everything I'm hearing up here, but that doesn't mean, as Commissioner Gardner said, that we just abandon this approach and try something else. I think it's just continuing to talk and work through it. So, anything else on this one? Okay.
Can I ask one question? Quick.
Yep.
So this would apply to every trail in Ashland, correct?
Yes.
Like all the trails in Lithia Park,
Yes.
a short trail at Ashland Creek Park?
Yes.
So, it's got a broader definition, I think, than just the watershed trails.
It's all trails.
And, I don't know, I haven't ever attended a TAC meeting, so but I see what the lineup is there, and I'm just wondering if, almost need to look at it with a broader view.
Well, let me just interrupt a second. When we put this new version of the TAC together, there were very specific positions,
Yeah.
or pedestrians, or, so that would happen.
Right.
And it's
So-
it's an infancy. I met twice or three times. I mean, so this is going to be an iterative process, just figuring out how TAC is going to operate, and how it's going to interface with us, and when do they come in here and present to us. And it is the definition, and I'll look to our legal department here. The definition of an advisory committee is that it advises the elected body. And then we have other kinds of committees, like management action, advisory committees. And so we'll figure out our own procedures for making that happen. That's almost an APR, commission level thing. How are we going to get that input back? And it shouldn't come through the liaison or staff. It needs to be the chair and sitting up there co-presenting or something. So the chair of the TAC. So we have work to do, just in terms of the way we run our operation. And I think that's kind of leave it there for tonight, because there's too many moving parts for us to get much work done without some further work behind the scenes. Okay. Is that okay with everybody? We'll move on. All right. So liaison reports, I think you have one. You gave yours. Anybody? Okay, Commissioner Gardner.
So I would just say, as far as the Senior Advisory Committee, hopefully everybody gets the newsletter that Natalie just came in everyone's mail.
I get it.
That kind of gives you an update on what's happening at the senior center. So, but I'm also the liaison to the Public Arts Commission. That I didn't make the last meeting, but I was in another meeting with one of the principals of that group, and I'm just gonna tell you what they're thinking about. two things. One is they have a couple pieces of art and they're looking for locations. And they look to parks for, and I just said, well, you better get on our agenda and come talk to us or talk to the director, because they have a piece of art they want to maybe put in Triangle Park. I'm going like, one of those things. So that, but also it looks like the mica blacklight artwork that's scheduled for Ashland Creek Park has, he actually got another fiscal sponsor and supposedly has a patron of the arts that's going to fund that project. So it might be coming to us quicker now. He was kind of spinning his wheels for a while, but it was a couple $100,000 project, but it sounds like you might have somebody to fund it. So anyways, that, and also just wanted to say the Ashland Parks Foundation is strategically moving forward. We just had I might have mentioned this last time, actually, about strategic planning, but I also wanted to say that we're putting in lots of hours on the Butler Parazzi Fountain project, trying to figure out how we're going to get it bid early next year and get it built. So I'll bring updates as I can on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to meeting dates. We will have an Ashland Senior Advisory Committee meeting on October 13th at the Senior Center at 3:30 p.m. We have a Recreation Division Advisory Committee October 16th at the Grove at 4 p.m. The Commission, has a joint meeting with the City Council on October 21st, Council Chambers here at 6 p.m. Park Commission Study Session, that's us again, November 5th, Council Chambers at 6 p.m. And that's to work on some very specific items associated with the PROS plan. Oh, that's December. Okay, you're right. This is more general goal setting for us for the next year. And then Park Commission business meeting on November 12th in Council Chambers. That's us back here again. But yeah, this study session is a warm-up conversation about our goals in relation to setting service levels as we work through the PROS plan. And in December, we'll discuss that specifically.
December will be strategic goals, and then January will be.
January, okay, I'm getting ahead of
service
myself.
level goals.
Yeah,
But
okay.
yes.
So there's a series of goal setting, and because basically the PROS plan is about setting service levels, and that's the policy decisions we'll be making. We're going to do some work leading to that, so we are building a foundation for that final January. And then PROS plan is going to be done when? for our approval?
Second week of April.
Second week of April. Okay, well, we'll pencil that one in.
There's a Trails Advisory Committee meeting on November 19th, 4:15 to 5:45
Thank you.
with the cabin.
Did we miss anything else that you guys are aware of? Okay. Commissioner Lunt, anything for the good of the group? He says goodbye. Okay, meeting adjourned.